So what's up everyone, this is Darren with Rose Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you guys my KSC/KWA MP9 setup, which is quite an interesting little SMG. Is because the KSC MP9 has been around for almost 7 to 8 years now, I think, with loads of video reviews, reports on the problems, gameplays, and shooting performance that you can all look up on YouTube. So you won't be seeing a video review from me, but I will be going over some of the important internal details with you guys, because that's more or less the only thing that you really need to pay attention to if you already have your eyes set on the MP9. So first, for the people who are not familiar with the MP9, let's first go over the externals. So the real steel version of the MP9 is made by B&T, and the B&T MP9 is the normal version that we're all used to seeing, and the B&T TP9 is the semi-automatic version. And in Airsoft, you can get the MP9 in several different colors. You can get it in black, coyote brown, or in Ranger Gray, which is the one that I have over here. That basically looks like Ranger Green to me. I don't really see any big differences. It just looks like Ranger Green. But I believe it's technically called Ranger Gray. And also, you can get the MP9 with a railed version on the bottom over here, or with a built-in vertical foregrip. I personally prefer the one with the rail, so you can attach whatever vertical foregrip that you want. I personally prefer to use the Magpul RVG grip. So with the exception of the rail and the vertical foregrip, the rest of the externals are basically the same. There's rail space on the top and on the right side, but not on the left, which is a little bit strange. And the body and the polymer folding stock is made of this nylon fiber reinforced polymer that's exceptionally well made. It's very, very strong. There's basically no flex whatsoever, despite the fact that the whole entire gun is made of that stuff. And the stock folds over to the right side of the gun with no sling points, other than this hole on the rear of the receiver over here. It doesn't really accept any traditional sling points, so a lot of people here, they like to use keychain rings or use bungee like this as their sling point. I personally prefer bungee because it doesn't make any noise. And moving forward, we have a selector. This is basically very similar to the AUG, and there's no safety other than the safety that's on the trigger. However, in my case, I removed the safety because for me, the trigger pull is heavy enough as it is. So with the trigger safety, it feels a little bit weird for me. So that's why I ended up removing it. So I can pull the trigger just by giving it a hard pull. Now, next up, we have the magazine release. The magazine release is not ambidextrous, and it's difficult to reach, even with my large hands. I actually find that I have to break my grip in order to access the magazine release, which is a bit of a pain. But luckily, the MP9 comes with a high-capacity magazine that can hold 48 rounds, which is super useful. It's because in CQB, I find that with a high-capacity magazine, it means I can take more opportunities, I can suppress more people, I can gun people down, and if I miss, I still got plenty of rounds left in the magazine, which is great. And next up, we have the bolt release, which looks a lot like a pistol slide release. And it's even positioned in a way where it's roughly the same area as you would normally expect, which is quite convenient. And this part is made of steel, by the way. So this will definitely last you in the long term. But the unfortunate part is that one of the key components of the gun, which is the charging handle on the top over here, this charging handle is made of plastic. Which is not very good. You do have to be a little bit gentle with this. Make sure that you actually pinch it, then pull it back, and not at an angle. Otherwise, you might snap the charging handle. And if you want to use the MP9 in the long term, it's just better to be gentle with it. And finally, we have the outer barrel, which has this proprietary tri-lug system, which is very, very strange. There are no threads for suppressors or for muzzle devices. You can buy a thread adapter for it. But in my case, I picked up one of these FMA QD suppressors that works perfectly with the tri-lug system. And all you have to do is align up this pattern with the tri-lug. All you have to do is line it up, give the suppressor a quick twist, until the locking tab locks into place. And there you have your QD suppressor, which is super convenient because if you like to run tracer units like this, this suppressor is perfect for me, because if you have a tracer in here, you just put it on for indoors when you use tracer BBs, and when I take outdoors, I just take the suppressor off and just run it just like this. So the QD suppressor is very convenient. Now, if you want to install a tracer into this, there are several different methods. You can basically use any tracer unit. I personally prefer to use the ACETECH AT2000 tracer module, which I have right over here. This is basically my favorite tracer module, is because it works, it's very reliable, it's very durable. I use it for my Gasselbacks, I use it for my Polar Star, I use it for my other SMGs as well. It is a little big, it is a little heavy, because it uses 4 AAA batteries, but it works, it's very reliable. So all you have to do is, if you want to buy this specific suppressor, you have to make a cushion at the bottom. This prevents the tracer module from going too far down. And then what you do is that you make 2 sleeves. This stuff is made of masking tape, by the way. One sleeve is to center the tracer module in the tube. You will notice that it's sort of centered already. And this last sleeve over here is to center it to the suppressor cap, so that it makes sure that the tracer unit is actually lined up with this hole. That's the reason why I made it that way. And you can easily take them off whenever you want, whenever you want to do your battery changes, which is the reason why I like the AT2000 tracer module. I actually own 3, now that I think about it. Yeah, Polar Star, GBB, and this. So I actually own 3 of these. I'll be doing a video review of these later on, but for now, this is my general setup, along with a Tokyo Marui MicroPro sight. So now we can quickly go over the externals. It's not too difficult to take apart. So what you have to do is take off this screw at the front over here. Keep in mind that the internals of my MP9 are just stock for now, with the exception of the CQB valve, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then push this pin in. Take the guide rod and the spring out, pop the cover off. And then over here, there's a tab over here. What you do is you push it in, pull the pin out. The rounded side faces up, the sharp corner side faces down. And then what you do is you give the bolt a good push forward. This pushes the full auto sear forward, and afterwards you pull this takedown lever where my index finger is right now. Pull it down, and you can take the whole entire bolt assembly out. So this assembly is actually very convenient. It actually feels sort of cool. So here's where we talk about some of the internals first. So for the bolt carrier, you can see it's very strange looking. Inside here, I've only have one aftermarket part in here, which you're looking at it right now. There's a red CQB valve in here. When you first buy the KSC MP9, it will shoot roughly around 390 to 400 FPS, depending on your temperature. And if you buy the CQB valve, it brings the power down closer to 1.1 to 1.2 joules. So that's the reason why I have the CQB valve here. DangerWorks, UAC, and Dynamic Precision make a CQB valve. I believe there's several other companies as well, but I'm not entirely sure. KSC / KWA, they also sell a CQB bolt that you can buy from them, which I opted not to get. It's because it, just buying this valve is a lot cheaper. This valve is about 80 Hong Kong dollars, which is basically more or less 10 US dollars. So this is a very cheap upgrade, but you do have to take apart this yourself. And there are pins here where you have to take apart. The disassembling of this is a little bit difficult, but if you don't have the proper tools, just make sure you buy the proper tools before you start disassembling this. Moving forward, we have the outer barrel. This outer barrel is completely stock. It's still using the standard KSC system. I already turned up the hop up a little bit by 4 clicks. Turning it counterclockwise will turn the hop up. Turning it clockwise will turn the hop up down. And the way that this works is actually quite interesting, because it goes into the bolt actually cycles partially on the outer barrel, and this is your your metal outer barrel, where your tri-lug system is, and it goes in like this. So it's really quite unique. Like, if you're fascinated by Gasoldax because of the way everything works, like, this is quite fascinating in my personal opinion. And another interesting thing is the feed ramp and the bolt release. So they're actually all sitting on one block over here. So this is the bolt release. You will notice that I've done some modifications to it. The first modification that I've done is that I've modified this area so that the bolt lock will happen earlier. I want it to happen earlier is because whenever you're using a Gasoldax with a very long magazine, there's a chance that cooldown will affect this. Especially if you're like me, if you dump a lot of rounds, these magazines will get cold, and your blowback force might get affected. So in order to make sure that my gun can bolt lock every single time without ever having to worry about it, I did this to make the bolt lock happen earlier. This, you don't have to do this modification. I did it mostly for my, for my ease of mind, so to speak. Another thing that you can do is that you can weaken the bolt release spring, the spring that keeps, that applies pressure onto the bolt release. So when you have your stock KSC MP9 on your hands, and if you take an empty magazine and insert it into the gun, you will notice that your slide release should lift up. However, occasionally you might have some that won't lift up. Notice mine will lift up no matter what. It actually lifts up very, very easily. If you have a KSC MP9, sometimes yours might not do this. So an easy way for you to fix that is just push the pin out from here, and then you can just pull the pin out from here, take the spring out, weaken it a little bit, put it back, and that's it. That's a very cheap way for you to make sure that your bolt release is a little bit more reliable. So that's one thing that you can do. Now, moving on to the next things that I did, which is mainly on the lower receiver now. So the lower receiver is very interesting, is because the trigger is here, trigger spring is here, but your hammer, full auto sear, is on this side right over here. That's your full auto sear. A lot of SMGs like this. That's your valve knocker disconnector. This is a steel piece that transfers the energy from the hammer through a metal bar bearing, a metal bushing, and then this steel piece will then move the valve knocker, which is right down there. So the way that this works is very interesting. It's, like I said, I can't name too many Gasoldax that are like this. I really like it might be overcomplicated, but I also quite like the fact that it's like that. And this is the cool part. So in order for the hammer to work properly, these are one of the few Gasoldax where the full auto sear is functional in both semi-auto and in full auto, meaning it is functional in both of these modes. So what you have to do is that you have to push, if you don't push the full auto sear forward, oh sorry, I pushed it forward earlier. If you don't push it forward, pulling the trigger will not work. You have to push it forward first, and then the hammer will drop. So that's the reason. So, and here, that's the full auto sear that I pushed earlier. This right here, all the way at the back over here, that's your primary sear. It's all the way here. It's a very strange design. It's probably the again, one of the weirdest ones that I can think of, where your primary sear is all the way back over here. Very fascinating. And then the trigger bar is very long. The trigger bar goes from here all the way to here, just like most other SMGs. A lot of SMGs like an MP7 are like that. Whether it be the KWA or Tokyo Marui, they're both like that. It's really quite fascinating. So, a few modifications that you can do over here to make it work a little bit more reliably. What you can do is that you can polish the engagement between your full auto sear and your hammer. This means that whenever your bolt slams forward, it doesn't need to apply as much force. It's easier for you to push the full auto sear out of the way. This preserves your full auto sear so that it doesn't get damaged as much, but that is not enough. Another thing that you have to do is weaken the spring over here. This allows you to basically use less force to push the full auto sear forward. and that basically means that this will be under less stress and it won't snap as easily. This is quite important, is because one of the parts that breaks very easily is your full auto sear. Sometimes people call this the disconnector. And the last and final thing that I did, which is the thing that you don't have to do, but I did it because I don't know, it's just a personal preference of mine. So basically what over here is that, can you see on the hammer, there is a silver line on my hammer over here. Can you see this area that I grinded off? But there's a line right here. That line is the cocking point for when everything works. And this extra area that I grinded is the excess part of the hammer, because when it comes to gasselbacks, almost every single real steel and gasselback, they will push the hammer beyond the cocking point for reliability reasons, for manufacturing reasons. Because if you have your cocking point very, very narrow on one specific area, you have to manufacture everything for your gun very precisely. So if you leave extra area for it to push the hammer further down, you don't have to waste as much time manufacturing everything that precisely. It's just because you'll waste too much time doing it. It will cost too much, and it might not be reliable ultimately in the end. So, however, in reality, you don't have to have the hammer go that far back. If your hammer goes that far back, that means you'll be fighting the excess hammer spring strength, the extra strength where you need to push the hammer further down, which you don't need to do. So if you don't need to do it, what you can do is that you can identify where the cocking point is by moving your bolt over here. I identify the cocking point to be right over here, where I drew that silver line. And afterwards, you basically grind off everything that you don't need. This is basically, if you guys are long-term followers of my channel, this is basically an IPSC mod. That's basically what it is. So it's very simple to do, especially for guns that are open like this. You can do it if you're experienced with AKs, that's basically the same thing. All you're basically doing is making it smoother for it to cock the hammer. That's all you're doing. You can do it to an AK, you can do it to an MP7, you can do it to an MP9, you can do it to an AUG, you can do it to a variety of different guns. There's one gun that you can't do it to, which is an M4. The reason why you can't do the IPSC mod to an M4 is because it's too difficult to check your work. Because for an M4, you have to close the receiver, which basically means that you can't see the hammer. So you can't mark your cocking point. You don't really know where it is exactly because everything is closed. So it's very, very hard. But for an MP7, for an MP9, or for an AK, you can see the bolt moving and you can see where the hammer cocks. So you can identify all those points. Whereas with an M4, because it's closed, you can't see anything. That's the reason why you can't really do it to an M4. You can guess, but you won't know. With this, you will know. And basically, that's all the modifications that I did. Nothing particularly special, except for this. I think this is probably the hammer. The IPSC mod is probably the only weird thing that I did. So now let's assemble the rest of this back. As a side note, if you've never taken apart an MP9, it is difficult, especially for the hammer assembly and this stuff over here. Getting this cage out is very difficult. So even for me, I'm used to it now, but I still find it to be a bit of a pain in the ass. Because I just rather not do it, unless if I absolutely have to. Oops, sorry. So make sure you push the full auto seal forward whenever you install the bolt back. Good, that's in. Now install your pin. But first you need to install this. Notice how that besides the flathead screw, most of everything here is toolless, because you don't really need any tools. If you guys pay close attention, you may have noticed that you can short stroke it, but I haven't done that yet. because short stroking the gun requires me to take into account other things. So I haven't done that yet. As a side note, I did pick up a Tnt Hopper System for this, but I'm not using it for now. It's because I want to do a TDC mod to the stock barrel, so I want to try to not rely on TNT. So that's the reason why I don't have it inside right now. And also the Tnt hop-up kit is not a drop-in. For me, it wasn't a drop-in. And lastly, over here, make sure this pin is seated properly. There we go. Notice that the pin sticks out a bit. So that's basically the MP9. So I hope this video wasn't too boring. I hope it was informative to some point. Perhaps I'll do more videos about this in the future if you guys are really interested in this. For me, it's sort of like a relic of the past, but it's a lot of fun. Like, to me, the ASG Scorpion, the Crytek Chris Vector, the MP9, MP7, KC PDW, all this stuff is still pretty darn cool to me, even though it's not exactly new stuff anymore. If you're into SMGs or PDWs or compact gasolbacks, this fits the bill very well. And it works way better than the pistol carbine, in my opinion, because you have way more potential from this. Since out of the box it already shoots 400 FPS, you can actually push it a little bit further. If you get like an inner barrel that comes out longer, like you can have a suppressor that shrouds your longer inner barrel. Therefore, you can have like a rifle that's very lightweight. Right? You can do weird stuff like that, right? So basically the world is your oyster when it comes to some stuff like this. So anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think. Please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. I also have a Facebook page and store, which there are sales going on right now, which you can check out in the link in the description box below. Peace, guys. Happy shooting, and thanks for watching.